course, becoming intimate means knowing yourself so the other can also know you. I have heard many adoptees say, I will never let someone really know me. They believe that keeping themselves secret is keeping themselves safe. There is a fear that the real self is some kind of monster, that if known to others would make them run away. Come on, adoptees, stop being so grandiose. You have no more claim on the quote unquote the shadow than any of the rest of us. We all have a shadow. Those unacknowledged aspects of ourselves that we believe others will not like you. Yours is no more monstrous than anyone else's. It isn't really what got you kicked out of paradise. Remember, you were a helpless infant. It was the grown-ups who did it. Okay, so I was about to go off, but I do actually agree with that. I'm sorry, guys. We are reading The Secret of Self. However, now I haven't read the rest of this part of the chapter. So keep that in mind. This commentary that I'm about to say may be null and void in a minute. So we'll find out. When they say that it's the grown-up's fault, I agree, right? But that is also the problem of why we can't be authentic. So when it comes to adoptees, or many of us, right? Not all, but many of us feel like, and adoptive parents tend to use our DNA and our parents' history against us to be that monstrous. Like, oh, you're just like your birth mother, or oh, you're turning just like your birth father, kind of thing, right? And that's a problem because you're making our DNA into the monster. So then we have to hide it. We already can't be authentic because we don't truly know our history, right? We're being forced to fulfill this role of being the infant of, or the child of someone else, but we don't really get to know the truth of our biological family. We don't get that genetic mirroring. We don't get our culture. There's so much more to it, right? And so those of us that do know, it's hard to place, right? So I'm going to give you guys a quick example where, so my biological father and my older half brother have been in jail. I think the worst of the worst. You can imagine. I'm not going to tell what's on the records. That's not me, right? That is not me. I had nothing to do with it. I'm nothing like that. However, thinking about it shames me because I don't want to be like that. I don't want to turn to substances, right? I don't want to go down that path. And being an adoptee puts us at risk for all that. And, we can say there's that monstrous, it's more of an action, I would say. But, sadly, there are going to be evil people in the world. That doesn't make us bad people. So hiding that, I used to hide that side. I used to completely ignore and just hide those emotions towards my biological father. And that's harmful, right? Because the truth is, they're still biologically related to me, but I'm not them. I didn't do those actions. I don't condone those actions at all. I can have empathy for someone who's, in addiction, right? I can understand that there's usually trauma involved and all that, and I can wish that people do better and seek help and get that recovery. Absolutely. But that doesn't make what they did, their actions, any less, right? And that's the part where I'm like, anyway, continuing on. Intimacy is all about sharing yourself with those close to you. It means first learning who you are so that you can share your authentic self and not that false self you fashioned out of trauma-based behavior that at one time helped you to cope. You are afraid of leaving that behind because you are afraid there's nothing else. Believe me, there is. I've met thousands of adoptees and I've never met one who didn't have an authentic self worth knowing. Sometimes it is difficult to see beneath the false self that is so firmly placed over the real self. But what is there is definitely not a monster. I've met thousands of loving, warm, talented, intelligent people, most of whom did not feel that way about themselves. They could let me know them, because I was a stranger. Yet many would admit that there seems to be an almost instinctive need to help themselves, secret from those who care most about them. What we are talking about is a boundary problem. An adoptee will tell the mailman who doesn't give a hoot about her all the problems who doesn't give a hoot about them, all the problems they're having with their boyfriend or girlfriend. Yet they won't tell their parents, who truly care. Part of this may be that the adoptee won't feel judged by the uncaring mailman. He won't offer advice or intrude in any way into their life. Parents, on the other hand, caring about the way their child is being treated, may have opinions or suggestions. Think control about the situation. This is apparent to the adoptee. There habitually misreads their concerns for control. And I want to give another example right there that sometimes, even when it's not just suggestions or opinions, they do sometimes cross the boundary of control. Yeah, I've dealt with it many times. All right. This is not to say that the parents aren't controlling. There are controlling adoptive parents as well as controlling biological parents. Adoptive parents may seem more controlling because their kids seem more out of control. These parents are scared, and the helplessness that their children feel about their lives is often projected onto them, so that they too feel helpless. But part of the feeling of helplessness comes from the fact that their children are so secretive. They are responsible for children who seem to be leading a secret life. This is not an enviable position to be in. Part of the secrecy which the adoptee seems prone to maintain may be a reaction to the secrecy surrounding their own birth family. If I cannot know about them, then you can't know about me. Every adoptee should understand something. When your mother left you, you may have felt that either your soul died or had to become someone else. You may be truly afraid that the authentic self that I am talking about doesn't really exist. You built your own existence out of your adaptation to your environment. Without that, it feels as if there is no self. Daniel Siegel says that certain states of mind, such as shame, humiliation, when activated, almost become personality traits. Traumatized people begin to identify with their reactions to their trauma and believe that this is who they are. What I am saying is that this is not true. Feelings and behaviors are results of experiences. Personality is more intrinsic, genetic. Okay, pausing there. Genetic, right? But we don't get a chance to explore that. We don't get those opportunities. So I feel like I've mentioned it before where, like, in part of my reunion, right, with my birth mom, getting to know bits and pieces, right? It may seem so insignificant, right? But something about, this is gonna sound maybe a little weird to some people, okay? Don't fault me. Feeling at ease in a cemetery, I know it sounds strange, or like wanting to ghost hunt, things like that, which I know I'm not alone in, okay? I can admit I'm weird. We joke I'm an alien. It's fine. That, it may seem weird, right? That's like, oh, but like, that's not genetic. And it may not be. But it turns out that's exactly what my biological mom did. Something like riding horses, which anyone can learn how to do. I've talked about this. both of my biological parents rode horses. I just had a natural act for it, right? Well, I mean, and so did my adoptive parents, so I was able to ride both, English and Western. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. Anyway, let's continue on before I get distracted with my phone. Okay. It has been there all along. What happened to it? Because there didn't seem to be any reflection for that self in your adoptive family, it stayed hidden. Yet the real self was there all along. It stayed hidden inside you like a treasure buried beneath a mountain. It was more hidden for some adoptees than for others, depending on the match between their true characteristics and for those of their adoptive parents. It also depended on how safe the adoptee felt in expressing their true self in their family. Despite the differences there were those differences seen as interesting and good, or something to be feared and bad? Did the adoptive parents understand the difference between trauma-based behavior and true personality, or were they convinced that their child's behavior reflected their personality? And what of the adoptee? Did they assume that because their mother didn't keep them, that their true self was flawed? Perhaps it wasn't the adoptive parents who were disapproving. Perhaps it was the adoptee themselves. Whatever it was, there are plenty of reasons that the authentic self of the adoptee has remained hidden, like a treasure beneath a mountain. It's time to dig up that treasure. Or, as Robert Bly says, now that we are adults, to retrieve all those aspects of our personality that we threw into the big sack we are carrying behind us as we journeyed through childhood and adolescence. The sack full of shadow, that sack full of treasure. When I get a peek of that treasure, when I see the real self beneath that false self, I feel like a lot of that false self. I cannot relate to the false self. All of that posing an inappropriate, either outrageous or perfectionist behavior, because it is like relating to a ghost. There is no substance. But I can see substance beneath all that posing. I can see substance in the real self. And I like it. Adoptees need to stop thinking they have a corner on the shadow market. So I actually don't know any adoptee, and I could be wrong, right? I could be absolutely wrong. That I have yet to hear any one of us, or seen any reflection of that, phrase specifically. I am in the process of writing a, inner childhood shadow journal that I will let you guys know when it comes out. That is specific to adoptees, because I think there's a very real need for it. But I don't think that it's just for us, There are definitely other people and other, circumstances, that need for inner childhood healing and the shadow work. And I've never seen, like I said, I never saw someone of the adoptee community like, oh no, it's only for us. Like, not once. I actually hardly hear adoptees speak about the shadow self and inner child work. Like, it very minimally. So, and again, this is just my observation from my years of living and being around, but yeah, I've yet to see that. So, sorry, I went on a tangent. Adoptees are neither any better nor any worse than the rest of us. Sorry, adoptees, I can't let you think you do better than the rest of us. You may be able to act that way, but you can't be that way. Okay, so I understand what she's saying is like, just because it's hidden from us doesn't mean that we're better at being bad. I don't like that. But, it's like giving us the stereotype of being evil or psychopath or serial unalivers, right? it's very much stereotyped, but obviously there are definitely people that are not adoptees, that are not foster youth or former foster youth, who are that way. I really don't think that anyone has tried to claim that market, if that makes sense. Um, what I do find a problem is that because of the secrecy, we don't really get to explore that authentic self, because we need that information from, the genetic mirroring, the culture, and all that. But we often don't get that. And even when we do, it's like very minimum, right? And then, even when you do get all that information, right, you're still being torn to fulfill this role for your adoptive parents. Now, some adoptees don't feel like that's a bother, right? Some adoptees don't want that information from their biological side. That's a very personal thing. But the thing is that it's forced by law for us not to have that, right? Or a lot of maybe our adoptive parents do the best that they can, but we're still lacking a lot of information that is legally we can't access. And that's part of the problem. So it's how do I explain this? There's multiple things that are coming into play that don't allow us to truly be that authentic self. So really our trauma responses, and as she said, and she did put this in the primal wound as well, that it's kind of a spectrum, right, of trauma responses, but you typically find the kids that like act out and, those quote unquote bad kids, or in the adopted community they'll diagnose with RAD, reactive attachment disorder. By the way, false diagnosis. It is CPTSD. But then you'll get the other side where you have the perfectionist, the goody two shoes type, and they miss all of the symptoms, right? That's the side I was on. Both ends problematic, right? Because you're either being misdiagnosed and treated completely different and not being understood, right? Completely missing the point of trauma responses, or the other, same, misunderstood, missing the trauma responses, and like it's like if you're not good, you'll be readopted. Sorry, try not to use the REHOMED word. Readopted, right? Or threaten to go back to your biological. Like they make it a threat. It's bad. I know not all of us experience that, but many of us do. So just throwing that out there. Anyway, I hope you all have a terrific day, and I will see you guys next time.